welcome back to the 15-Minute Fix, where we're giving you personal and professional development tools on the go in 15 minutes or less. I'm Kasha Gordon, and I'm here with
Kimberly Robinson.
We're glad to be with you all another week. Today we are talking about the very important subject of how to negotiate your salary. So Kim's going to start us off by giving us a little bit of insight. So Kim, talk to us about salary negotiations.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kasha. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about and really excited to share some tips and tricks with our 15-minute fixers. I think that this probably doesn't get enough airtime. I think we talk about it in bits, but we really want to give you some solid tools today to be able to set you up for success. Some reasons why this is important to me is specifically for women. So between women and men, there's often pay inequity. And then there's further division when we look at the difference between races. So a white man compared to a Black woman getting paid is a lot of times a severe disparity there. And part of the reason why, specifically between women and men, that there is some disparity in the amount of pay for doing the same amount of work is because women are less likely to negotiate their salary. So as a woman and as a woman of color, this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I love to share the tips and tricks that I have learned with others to be able to strengthen that tool in your toolbox. I think also something to consider, everything these days has been impacted by the pandemic. And specifically for pay and just what households are bringing in, there's a lot of people that have been forced into some type of pay instability, whether that is losing their job or working at a reduced salary. So I think it's important from that aspect. Additionally, as you continue along your career journey and your journey to be an adultier adult, these are some important tools that you can use to ensure that you're properly compensated for the skills, experience, and education that you have. I'm sure most of us, our team tuning in today, are either in the process of, working on their career, have established some type of educational background, and you want to make sure that the salaries that you're getting commensurate with that experience and skills that you're bringing to the table. The salary that you start out with, especially if you're planning to stay with one company for several years, is the basis that they will use for all your future promotions and how you're set up for your next promotion or even your annual raises. It's typically a percentage of that number or a dollar amount on top of that number. So it's really important to get it right from the beginning. And I think there's some really easy ways that we can give you to do that today. I know this is probably a scary and daunting process for some, but just like with everything else that we're sharing, number one, having those tools and knowledge are important. And then two, knowing how to approach those conversations so it's less daunting is what our goal really is for sharing this today. So we're going to share some tools and resources. There are a ton of resources online that you can look up for yourself, but we have pulled out some today that we think are especially impactful. So an article that I'm going to reference quite a bit here is the 15 Rules to Negotiating a Job Offer. One of the key things that I think is key across all negotiations, and we're talking about salary today, but if you know anything about negotiation, this is important. You don't want to give your number too early. And I think that's important to say because a lot of times, even before you get to the interview process, they're asking about what that number is. And sometimes you are required to give it, especially if you're doing an online application. I've encountered where it forces you to put in a number. But if you have the opportunity to say that you would like to learn more about the position before committing to that number, that typically puts you in a better position to be able to negotiate what your salary will be. If you lowball it, hopefully you've done some research prior to that, but you don't want to go too low or too high to get yourself out of the running. You really want to get into where that sweet spot is. And again, we talked about your education and experience. You want to take all that into consideration when you're putting your number out there for the first time. If they give you a number first, you certainly want to appreciate your offer, but you want to state what your target salary is based on the research that you have done for that position. The second point is, in this case, just like with like how we talked about with your job interview, this is about selling yourself. Sometimes to get that number moved up, you have to sell yourself and explain to them why you are asking for that higher number. So don't underestimate the power of your own likability. You want to be polite, but also confident. You certainly want to be yourself, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to do that throughout your interview process, and really now it's just the icing on the cake. There are going to be awkward moments. Talking about money can be an awkward conversation for most people, but you want to anticipate that and know how to pivot in those situations. You want to definitely ask for what you deserve. Again, we've talked a little bit about that already. You want the number to commiserate with the experience and skills that you're bringing, but you also want to come across too greedy. So, having that research is key. So you find out where your sweet spot is based on what you are bringing to the table. And then it's important to be persistent with what you want, but don't be petty. If this is a give and take conversation, so you are going to state what your requests are, you'll also maybe have to compromise a bit, but kind of have an idea going in about what things you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. So, you really want to understand that your offer, you don't want to just leave it at face value. A number is a number, but you should have a story behind that. When you're putting that number out there, explain to them why. Reiterate the things that you've already shared with them, the reason why that you're at this point in the process. Reiterate that as you're sharing your number so that they understand that you're worth the penny that you're asking for. And then it's important to really understand your audience. So I think this is a good point to call out that salary negotiation isn't always appropriate. And one thing that comes to mind is I know that with a lot of government jobs, a salary negotiation isn't even an option. But beyond that, if you are interviewing for a job where you do know that you have some potential to negotiate, you want to understand who you're talking to. A conversation that you would have with an HR person that's giving you the job offer versus the hiring manager that you've been interacting with is going to be a completely different conversation. Typically, if you're talking to someone in HR, they're kind of just going with the guidelines that they've already been provided. They probably they're less likely to bend on some of those things. That, of course, that may vary based on the company or the person, but if there are things that you're specifically wanting, you may need to invite other people to the conversation. So it's important to understand who's on the other side of that table.
Can I add something there, Kim? Because I think that's a great point. So I've worked both in the public sector and the private sector. I've worked for state government twice. I've worked for a lot of companies privately in human resources. And you're right. State government, it was near to impossible to negotiate. I mean, I'm sure somebody has done it, but it's probably depending on the position that you have, obviously. But I think for many individual contributors or people that are not director level or above, they typically don't negotiate salary. They tell you the range up front, or they tell you the dollar amount up front, and that's typically what it is because they're working with very specific budgets. In the private sector, private companies, larger companies, they have a little more flex room to negotiate. And sometimes they may move the salary needle a little bit, but they also may offer you benefits instead, or a bonus plus salary versus just a higher salary.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. I think that, in the situation that we are right now, companies as well are feeling the impact of the pandemic. So it's important to understand if there are potentially some financial challenges there. It doesn't mean that they can't give you what you want, but you may consider what you're asking for, or what's included, or what that looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But indeed, it's definitely important to understand your audience and how to approach that conversation. Something else to consider, as I was reading this article, something really jumped out to me. In the moment that you are talking about negotiating your salary, you're not negotiating with the company, right? You're negotiating with that person. So all the rapport that you've built up to this point, all the likability that you've established, all the things that you've done to reiterate your experience and skills, you are selling that to that person. So you want to put yourself in a position where that person will be willing to go to bat for you if there are some things that you are asking for, or you have to, maybe go back and forth the time to find a sweet spot, but really understand that, connect with that person and have that conversation. And just to be sure that you solidify and you're clear in your intent and how you approach this discussion. In addition to this conversation being a little awkward, there may be times that you are encountered with some pretty tough questions. Number one, if you are in the process of searching for a job and you have many offers on the table, you may get asked about that, and that's not uncommon. So you want to be prepared with what you'll say if they ask you if you have other offers. And if they were your top choice or not, that may be, something that you get asked. So you want to understand how to navigate that question before you get there, so you're not caught off guard. And as always, and I think we reiterated this as we were talking about interviewing in general, it's important to be honest. It's okay to be honest, but you want to also keep your bargaining power as much as possible. So if they weren't your top choice and, you prepared that, think about some reasons why, and, potentially there's something that may offer you that would make them your top choice. So be honest about what that looks like. If there are other offers and they ask you that directly, you certainly want to be honest about that as well. I think at any point in this process, whether it's the interview or negotiating, dishonesty will probably take your integrity down quite a bit, and you may have the opportunity to lose an offer. I know people that's happened to. So certainly consider how you can be honest, but also direct, and also focused on the goal that you have set for going into this conversation, but you keep some of that bargaining power on your side of the table.
And that's not to say that you always have to tell them what your other offers are, right? But you can say, yes, I'm considering a few offers at this time, but I would like to continue to pursue a conversation with you all. I would like to really see where this goes because you all have been at the top of my list, etc. Don't tell people they're third and fourth on the list. You definitely tell them they're your top, but be honest and say you have other offers, but you don't have to disclose what those are per se.
Absolutely. Again, honesty doesn't mean always full disclosure in that regard. And that's why it's important to think about those questions prior to getting to the conversation, because you can think about what's important to share and what things are better left unsaid. Because again, that may shift the force of the bargaining power as well, depending on what information you share. So really thoroughly think about that, bounce those ideas off of other people if you're unsure. Again, there's tons of research, there's tons of resources available for you to research and get more clarity on that, because there's a ton of things that we could go for. We could do a video just on that, but you just want to be clear on how you can properly communicate, but also keep some of that but keep it honest, but also keep it direct to what you're looking for. The other side of this is, and we don't always think about this, but sometimes it's easy to get fixated on the dollar amount of what that position is offering, but you really want to consider the whole deal. It's not always about the money. Sometimes those numbers look attractive, as well they should. I'm sure you've worked hard to get where you are and want to be compensated well for it. And it's not to say that you should just accept any salary, but there may be other things that you can consider outside of that. So some things that I can think of are perhaps if you're considering going back to school or getting some types of certifications, is there an opportunity for you to get that? Some of those, we know that education, certifications, that cost can add up. And, depending on what your goals are over the next several years, that may be something that's important to you. So you can look at options there. What other benefits can you negotiate? Could we negotiate possibly additional vacation time, or getting certain days off? There's a ton of there, and you'd be surprised what leeway the company has. Sometimes if you are looking for a big promotion and it's going to cause you to relocate, sometimes you can negotiate more on your relocation expenses if that's something that's important to you. There are just several things that are not attached directly to your salary, but are part of your total benefit and compensation that you may consider, especially as we are in an age where there's tons of startup companies that are, gearing more towards less traditional benefits and more towards what the workforce of today needs. Really do some research on that company. See, sometimes places like Glassdoor will give you insights as to what benefits they are that are special. Really think about what it is that's important to you, what you want to give, what you want to bring to the conversation, what you're willing to give a little leeway on, and what are the things that are non-negotiable. Hopefully this is a job that you are hoping to have for a long time, or just for a set amount of time. But whatever it is, you want to be able to get what it is that you need from that position while you are there. So really take those things into consideration.
Kim, good insight. Kim actually helped me write my first and probably some subsequent salary negotiation letters. I probably owe her a couple of dollars. So I should probably get on that and start saving
I'll
that for
send you
her.
my Cash App.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sure you will. Because, yeah, she actually helped me write a phenomenal letter that gave me some insight I hadn't considered. But you gave some great points, Kim, about it being mutually beneficial, not always being about the dollar amount, but the full comp and benefits package. So thank you for that. All right, the program for negotiation, which is a part of Harvard Law or attached to Harvard Law, they actually have a free resource guide for negotiating salary. So we'll include that link for you. That is your resource for today, and it's called Salary Negotiating, and it's a free ebook. And our challenge for this week is going to be to go online and do some research, look for some templates or samples of salary negotiation letters, and begin to think about what you see there. Begin to draft your own. Read this article that we're going to send you or this ebook that we're recommending, and really start to think about proactively how you want to approach your next job interview or post interview when you're negotiating your salary. So we're excited to see how much more you can make and expand your financial abilities in that way. And then we'll both send you our Cash App after that.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Kim, as always. Great chatting with you.
Oh, great chatting with you too. Negotiation is always something that you can use, be it salary or other things. So we really hope that you will deep dive and sharpen that skill to be able to use, and let us know some success stories that you have. We'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. All right. You all have a great week. See you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.